What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 677 of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk Hot Tags of the Week. I'm your host, as always, with my microphone back to normal, Tony Mango, joined as always by Callum Wiggins.
Hello.
And Robert E. Felice.
Hey. We
have our normal setup going on, well, as normal could be in this time frame, and the way that everything's I'm all over the place. You know that's been happening for the past however long, and we're trying to slowly get back into at least somewhat of a semblance of as close to normal as possible. But you don't have to hear my awful webcam microphone, at least right now. So that's one step in the right direction. Hopefully everybody's doing okay. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below about that kind of stuff or anything else. Obviously we want to hear what you guys have to say about these topics that we're going to be breaking down. So as you're listening to the podcast, drop those comments, or if you're listening elsewhere, leave a comment on all the different other platforms that we've got. Maybe you're over hanging out on the Discord server. Maybe you're on Facebook, Twitter, whatever it might be. If you are on any of those things, though, make sure that you're following us. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you, at least on YouTube, ring that notification bell and get those email alerts set up for when we go live, because we do have the pay-per-view to break down tomorrow night, AEW Full Gear. Your usual setup, we're going to have our pay-per-view point post-show immediately following that. So, we'll review everything that happens on there. We're going to give you some updates on the AEW Full Gear card on this episode of the Hot Tags, too, because two things have been added to there. Well, one's technically been added, one's going to be added a little bit later on. So, if you want to continue all that stuff and roll along with that, obviously, we would really appreciate any support that you guys give us, whether that is something free, like hitting the like button, or if it's something on the monetary side of things. If you want to join our YouTube channel membership, that is going to be very advantageous pretty soon, because I'm going to be trying to flood the content with some different target guests and stuff. Got a lot of ideas. It's just a matter of when do I consolidate my, I think I'm at 11 to-do lists right now that ignore my perpetual to-do lists and my calendars and all that stuff. I think I have 11 separate to-do lists that I need to sort out from things on my phone and a notepad and Notepad++ and Evernote and all these things. At some point, I'm going to be trying to do a couple different Darkcast things just to make up for not having a whole lot of the main events recently. So some fantasy booking content. Maybe I'll be doing some fan outs table stuff. I don't know. We'll see. So, join those tiers over there, or the Patreon. It's the same exact thing. Redbubble and TeePublic, of course, you can pick up your merchandise, and I think that it's pretty much on sale from now until the end of the year. I don't know 100% for sure, don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure that almost every product and almost every design on both websites for A Mango Tees, Smark Out Moment, or Fanboys Anonymous should all be on sale. And I'm going to try to get some extra little things up on A Mango Tees about some election stuff sometime soon, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, that's some of those things out of the way here, because obviously we want to get into some of these discussion points. That's the whole point of the podcast. Let's talk about something that I don't know if we have 100% confirmation for, but it seems like this is the case. And the reason I don't know why we have 100% confirmation is because I didn't see this when it supposedly actually aired, but I've been seeing it around all over the place, and that is the new logo for Monday Night Raw. I didn't see this on Netflix itself. Some people are claiming that they had seen this on a commercial or something, and I just haven't had the time to do the research to be let me see if I can find footage of that or something. But at least this logo's going around, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I think that this is one of the absolute worst Raw logos that they've ever had. I'm going to go to Logopedia, which is a great website. That's just I'm such a nerd sometimes that I would know that off the top of my head, but
you are.
Yeah. But Logopedia, if you go there, it's a fandom wiki type of site, has all the different Raw logos that they've had over the years, back to the Monday Night Raw logo pre-Raw is War. They've got the different cage kind of setups, the bladed razor blade kind of looks, and there's been a lot of similar things that we've seen with the Raw logo, but this is just my least favorite that I can really look at for almost any of these. I don't like the way that R looks. It's got too much of like a curve to it. And I mean, I don't really like the concave bottom to it too. And yes, this sounds very, nerdy, but it doesn't read to me like it says Raw. Like if I just glance at it, it looks like it's either a B, like BAW, or like an E, or maybe even a D at times, or an 8. Like I don't like that R at all. And I think if you just change that, I'd like it considerably more. But I guess it's not necessarily 100% official, according to some people. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I'm sure you guys have less opinions about this than I do, but I'm giving it my massive thumbs down. What about you guys?
Okay, Callum, have you seen the logo in question?
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts on the logo beyond it's a logo?
Well, I mean, it's bad. I'll say that. Like, I mean, I would even admit that like, it's an ugly looking logo. It's obvious that they're trying to. It's a mock-up of the Netflix logo, just trying to fit Raw into the Netflix shape with the curved bottom and the straight at the top of it. So they've tried to fit it in as best they possibly can, and it's as I say, it looks really ugly. So, but as I say, that's kind of where the kind of issues lie a little bit beyond for me. It's like, it's like, as I say, it's an ugly looking logo, but that's just what they decided to go with. So
now, I will say, I don't know how many of you know this but originally I wanted to be a graphic designer specifically because I used to love all of the cool posters and logos and shit that would be on WWE. If I was a kid now and saw this, I might want to be a graphic designer to change the logos and certain things in WWE. I am working under the assumption that this is not real, based on the simple fact that I asked the day after Paul and Tyson, hey, do I need to do an article on this? No one ever got back to me. No one ever enforced doing the article, so they must have gotten word that it ain't real. I do hope that they change their logo because everything else has gotten a new logo, but I can't imagine it being this. And I do know that they've confirmed Travis Scott will do the theme song. That's not necessarily my cup of tea, but very on brand for what they've been doing lately. And I guess I'm just one of those curmudgeonly old guys that is stuck in my ways of I want, the shit I grew up on, and this ain't it.
As far as like the Raw logo is concerned, and like the things that I like, the things I don't like, and all, I didn't realize that we've had this one with a little arrow at the bottom of it since 2019. That's been a long while.
Yeah, because when they originally changed the logo for the Mick Foley GM era,
2016, which I didn't like that one at all. That was as bland as could be. And then they switched it up and
they changed the arrow a little bit, and they were like, "Okay, you're done for the next 5-6 years."
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like, I haven't liked this font that they've been using, and the one that they had. When was the time frame that from 2012? Yeah, they had tweaked with like the WWE logo and stuff, but like that font I thought was really nice with like the sharper corners and stuff. Like if they went with that, even if they just went with that again, I'd be like, all right, cool. I like that one. But I liked that kind of more razor blade-ish sort of look that they had been using and that they used in like 2006 and all. Going back to like 2002, the logo with whatever these little metallic brackets are, like I like that. That looks kind of nice. Never really liked the stencil look, but that was kind of classic in a certain way. But for the most part, it's like, I just don't like the very original Raw logo and this one. Like, and like, all right, well, I guess you're gonna stuck with this for 10 years or something.
Being forced to look at all of them now, as you shared the Logopedia link, I can confidently say the only two that I have ever liked are the Raw's War logo, like the stencil one, and the original Raw's War, and the 2002 through 2006 logo, which is easily my favorite now that I look at them all comparatively.
So, I mean, we might see some tweaks to it. Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. That's an option that they can get into, like, kind of messing around with it, and that we could just be like, oh, you know what? It turned out to be a different story. But yeah, as far as the Netflix thing goes, another topic that we didn't really talk about before, we kind of brushed about this on the Full Gear thing. The fight itself, we said, you know, like, that fight was stupid and clearly just set up to be like that. And they got everybody's money. They got everybody to tune in and all that. So you can't blame them for it. But
well, we do need to talk about the fact that fucking streaming quality was terrible.
Absolutely terrible.
It was terrible. To the point where, and this is the funniest thing I've seen on social media from a company in years, the official Peacock account tweeted, "So how is everybody's night?" with a smiley face, which I thought is fucking hysterical. Because, look, we can say what we want about Peacock. I don't love the app itself, but I've never had a major problem watching a WWE pay-per-view.
I haven't really had any for the most part. And then when it comes to, like, you know, the other things that have been in that mix, like when they've been on the WWE Network versus on Peacock, and then when you've got, like, yeah, when you throw AEW in there, like, Bleacher Report always had issues for me.
Never had a single issue.
I always did. Whether it was multiple different TVs, if it was my computer, like any of those elements, I always had an issue with Bleacher Report where after a certain amount of time, it would just go mute. And I would have to back out and restart the thing just to be able to get the sound back. But I have had minor issues with Peacock over the past couple of years, issues at the beginning of it when they first had it, but never the quality being the way that this was with Netflix. And I'm sure that a good portion of that is just the sheer volume for it, because there are way more people that were tuning into this than will tune into even WrestleMania. But it doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence that they'll be good for WrestleMania. Like, it's kind of like, okay, well, were your servers crashing because there's, 50 million people watching or something? Or were your servers crashing because more than 1 million people were watching? Like, just because the floodgates are open of, like, something bad happening with that doesn't necessarily mean it was just the volume 100% on that front. So I was not able to watch a good portion of that, because next thing I knew, it was like, okay, I have to restart, and then it's going to be 25%, it's going to be stuck, and then it's stuck on 99%. And when it would even work perfectly fine, sometimes it would be muted, sometimes the quality was full on potato. So yeah, it's not great, and I hope that they have that stuff fixed.
So I will say, just in terms of the card itself, the undercard championship matches part of the fight I thought were tremendous. And I'm not really like a boxing guy, but I thought the Serrano Taylor fight was really good. And so was the Ramos Barrios fight. Really great fights. And no problems as well while watching those. It was clearly, and this is why we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, it was clearly like everybody called their friend and said, now. And then overloaded and crashed. But that's not necessarily great for us, because if everybody goes, holy shit, The Rock's back,
yeah,
and everything just crashes, it's not necessarily how I want to watch Raw.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will come down to whether it was like just the sheer volume of people watching, because there were at one point, I believe, just over 60 million people at one time watching the Tyson Jake Paul fight. So, like, you're not going to even, well, barely a fraction of that will be watching a typical episode of Raw. Obviously, you have to take into account the international aspects of it, because like it won't just be like the American audience is watching it, because I got my email through today saying that the WWE Network has been discontinued in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's talk about that, because I'm not happy about where this is going. But here's why: because they're already starting to prep you for that WWE Vault YouTube channel being where all of the old pay-per-views and shit's gonna go, which means there's gonna be a moment relatively soon where we lose access to like probably more than half of the content that we currently have access to for only $10 a month. And I'm not like, I don't want to take that huge step backwards. Small thing to most in the grand scheme of things, but I like the ability to be like, I have access to every Mania ever. If I need to, well, if we're going to do a Announce Table podcast, it's just all there. You know, I don't want that to go backwards to, okay, well, is this even available now to watch? That's my concern.
What is this WWE Vault thing? This is news to me.
Oh, it's a YouTube channel. Have you not been keeping up with that? It's a YouTube channel where they've been
like start
3 months ago, maybe.
Oh, yeah, I guess it's just been off my radar.
So, like, for example, the WWE Vault YouTube channel has already uploaded at least one Coliseum home video. The WWE Vault YouTube channel has uploaded a full documentary from the John Experience. I think that was like a DVD in the early 2010s. And this Sunday, they're going to upload the entire 1990s Survivor Series pay-per-view.
I mean, that's, if it's free, that's a good thing then.
If it's free, but I don't want to be drip fed all of the shit that I already have access to.
You mean like not have access to it for a long while in the grand scheme? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not interested in that.
Well, I think they'll be like, you know, selective in terms of what stuff gets put to the forefront. Like, I imagine that you'll get access to like all pay-per-views through Netflix still. I know that's just like an anticipation thing, but I imagine that that's one of the easiest and most glaring things that you do is say like, okay, every single WWE pay-per-view goes onto Netflix, but you might lose, you know, we're not going to upload all episodes of Superstars or like from the 70s and 80s that people barely watched anyway from that stuff. Like, so yeah, as I say, it doesn't really bother me. I haven't used my WWE Network subscription for the best part of the year. Like, I barely ever go onto it at all, just to, you know, check one thing here or there. But like, and yeah, the only time I ever use it is for our finance tables, really. So it's good riddance as far as I'm concerned. It's one less thing that I'm paying out for, because it'll now just be on the Netflix that I already paid for. But yeah, as I say, in terms of like the string side of things, like if things were running kind of smoothly for the Toronto Taylor fight, it'd be a case of, well, at its peak, that was getting 50 million people watching concurrently. So if it was running fine then let's take the perspective of, okay, it can handle anywhere up to 50 million viewers, in which case Raw's probably going to be fine.
Right. So yeah. It's not going to get 50 million viewers on an episode of Raw, even if The Rock and John Cena and everybody's standing in the ring together. So the pay-per-views,
I don't think there's really.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that I just don't think there's really that much need to worry too much about it until it does, until certain things. I imagine things will go wrong initially, because Netflix is very new to the live streaming aspect of this kind of model. So I imagine things will still go wrong, at least initially. Like, it would be funny that if something were to like it just cut out like halfway through the first episode, and then they have to scramble to try and recover it. Just from, like I say, not from just like a fuck WWE standpoint, just like, oh yeah, that's just funny. If this would happen to AEW, that would also be funny. If the first thing they ever put on Max, it just craps out the first time, that would just be funny. But yeah, people would get frustrated pretty quickly if it became like a regular occurrence. So So yeah, they need to use it at least as an opportunity to check their systems and make sure that these things will be more solid and robust by the time that the first episode airs.
Yeah, I mean, I've had issues with Netflix before for just like regular streaming stuff, like not live streaming, where I don't know if it's like like a my account type thing, or just, it happens with everybody or whatever. But there's been plenty of times where I've had very slight internet issues, and something like Plex or Peacock or whatever, like that, those will work okay, but Netflix won't. And I don't know if that's a matter of Netflix not having like the best servers. You would think that they would probably have better ones than some of the other ones, especially something like Peacock. But yeah, I mean, it's not, at least, it might not be anything whatsoever. We might end up in January, Raw's perfectly fine, and then pay-per-view things and stuff end up being perfectly fine. But it doesn't do any good to have had those technical difficulties and to have it be like, all right, well, we might have to worry about that. So we have to kind of wait and see. But I want them to
point, though. Like, everybody might be on their own in terms of, bro, how much can your internet handle?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not just watching cable. And I don't know the percentage of people right now watching cable through a traditional box. I personally haven't since 2019, but there are at least some people who, are better off because they're just watching straight through a box and they're getting the actual cable feed. This might be a situation where, it's a terrible experience, but just because you're paying for bottom of the bar internet and it's just not going to handle streaming well.
Yeah, and I'm in the process where I'm going to be potentially switching up a few things around now that like Spectrum gives you the option where you don't need a box. You could just use their app. So I'm like,
don't do it.
Not great.
Like I just said, you're better off watching with the box.
Yeah.
If you already had the box, I wouldn't switch.
I mean, we have multiple TVs that like, we have a TV in our guest room that like nobody uses, obviously, because it's a guest room. So it's like, okay, well, I'm getting rid of that box almost immediately. I'll save $5 a month if it's going to be $5 a month. That's great, So
that stuff like that's fair, but like if I had the option, I would have went with the box.
No, I'll probably keep my box in my living room. Stability over everything else. Yeah, so I mean, we'll wait and see when it comes to that. I know that there had been one report that said that WWE is even more interested now in getting Jake Paul to team up with Logan Paul. And I had put out a thing on an EWN question of the day saying, all right, fantasy book this. You got Logan Paul and Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson and blank. And, I tossed out a few names. I was like, if you could get Austin, that would be the thing that would make the most sense and stuff. But you would assume that probably wouldn't be the case, that if they can get Jake Paul and Logan Paul to do something together, it's not going to involve Mike Tyson. So just, generally speaking, a quick fantasy booking thing. If you got the Paul brothers against two people in WWE, who do you guys think would be the best options for that?
Whoever the tag team champions are. The Paul brothers.
Would you really go with that over like a match between the Paul brothers versus two big names, or would you rather go the Paul brothers versus like JD McDonough and Finn Balor? You're gonna pick the name values more.
I mean, if I had to pick name value, I don't know anyone I don't know of a makeshift team that would carry enough value unless you're gonna put them against Cena and Orton. My mind goes to, okay, if you're booking a tag team match for them, you're probably going to put them against tag champs and say, hey, they're going for the tag titles, because otherwise, what teams do you have that could actually connect and draw? That's, of course, assuming that you can't just say, I put them against a Prime DX, and then, of course, that sells money.
I mean, to me, Cena and somebody would probably be the best case scenario, because that Cena and Logan Paul match would make a lot more money than a lot of other things.
Again, if we're doing like okay, Cena, and you're just going straight box office, I think a lot of people would enjoy to Cena Orton against the Paul brothers. That checks off enough boxes of I know who John Cena is, I know who the Paul brothers are, I know what an RKO out of nowhere is.
Cena Cody be an option if they wanted to do that. Yeah.
Any actual brothers that we could put them up against?
Actual brothers or wrestling brothers?
Either or.
Are we talking like the Hardy Boys, or are we talking Smoking Guns, where they're quote unquote brothers?
I mean, I wouldn't have gone to the Smoking Guns. I would have gone to Undertaker and Kane. Yeah. But the Hardy Boys kind of brothers.
What you mean, like the Usos?
Yeah. Right, but even then, I think you're making that a match for the tag titles. Because I think that's where the money is, them challenging for, oh my God, are they going to become WWE champions?
I mean, they could work if they wanted to do that.
If it was the Usos, I think that's your best bet.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten briefly that they were reunited, but you're right. Do the Usos.
Let's switch over to a different topic here from that. Let's talk about the WWE ID program. We didn't get a chance to talk about this, I think, at all, other than we might have actually just mentioned, hey, this is a thing that is going to be happening soon. Because I lost track of what we've done the past two Hot Tags episodes. We had the I don't know edition of just being I don't know, let's just do something. And whatever the last round of the Hot Tags were, which I don't believe we went through a whole breakdown of this, but there have been more and more people announced for this roster for the past few days. Almost every day they seem to announce a new person, and I've pretty much heard of almost nobody on this list, but before we break down and potentially any individual thing, here's the current lineup, at least as far as I'm aware. On the male side of things, there is, I always like this name, Cold Brew Cappuccino Jones. Love that. That's so great. Aaron Roberts, Aaron Rourke, Brad Baylor, Bryce Donovan, Freedom Ramsey, Jackson Drake, Jack Cartwheel, aka Jack Summit. Did I mention Bryce Donovan? I think I might have. Yeah. Ice Williams, somebody who the name keeps popping up as just Gal, and then there's It's Gal, and then there's Gal Barkay. So I don't know exactly what this ring name is. If it's,
I believe they wrestle under Gal.
Okay. And it's just accounts have different names.
No, but on the WWE ID picture, it said It's Gal.
Yeah.
But I went and looked at a couple of matches, and it was literally just JL. That's what I went with when I did the article.
Gal, Sam Holloway, or whatever, Sean Legacy, Ricky Smokes, Marcus Mathers, Justice Gale. So there's Gal and Gale. I don't believe I'm missing anybody on that front. And then on the women's division, there's Zara Zakher. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Zeta Steele, Zoe Sager, all the Z names. And then the big focal point when it comes to actually a more well-known name and one that we can kind of break down a little bit more, Kylie Rae, which that is very interesting to me because at this point, Kylie Rae was brought into AEW as one of their pretty solid picks from the very start and quickly fizzled out, and then went through a series of different challenges with anxiety issues and some other stuff that we're not privy to that I'm sure are way more complicated than we could even break down. There's been the whole accusations of something happening with Chris Jericho, which may or may not be true. Whatever has been happening with Kylie Rae, it seemed to have stretched long enough that it affected her TNA run as well. And I have been completely unaware of anything that Kylie Rae has done for probably 2 years now, I think. So for her name to pop up on here, that was very shocking to me. First being, I didn't even know that she was still wrestling necessarily. And second being, realistically, and I'm not trying to be mean here, WWE would be taking a little bit of a risk if that were the case. If there's a history of like 5+ years of Kylie Rae not necessarily being able to be in that kind of a position for one reason or another. And I don't know how she could handle a potential WWE schedule. It might be the best thing for her. It might be something where they're just like, well, it's the international, or not international, it's the independent development first look type of deal. We're not actually signing her to anything. She's not actually in the Performance Center. She's not wrestling on NXT. And it could just be, we were interested enough in her to keep an eye on her, and that's it. But I hope that this all works out for her, because I do remember back in the day being like, oh, look at that. Like, we've got AEW's Bayley, and she seems like she's got some potential. And then everything kind of went to shit. But I don't know anything from any of these other people other than I know I've seen Jack Cartwheel in like one Ring of Honor match or something. I couldn't tell you anything about him. I don't even know if he does cartwheels. I'm assuming he does.
I mean, yeah, that would be a safe bet.
Yeah.
He does a lot of cartwheels.
It's like, he's actually, he does backflips instead.
He's Jack Backflip.
Jack Backflip. Jack Flip Cartwheel. There you go.
Was the ice water and Cappuccino Jones where you make an iced coffee?
Ice Williams.
I
mean, they could be, that could be something they could be work together. But
the Kylie Rae thing is great. Like, she did have her troubles that took her out of AEW after the one match. She, I think, went through more long-term mental health struggles after the TNA run, briefly retired. She had a baby. She's been a pretty consistent force at freelance wrestling in Chicago. She did do the one main event match in 2022 against Dana Brooke under Brianna Ray, so she didn't even wrestle as Kylie Rae. And I hope that it works out for her. Some of the other names that interest me, the Brad Baylor is like a really young dude from Wrestling Open. So he's got a ton of years to just keep getting better at this. I know a few of the names like Bryce Donovan, Marcus Mathers from like GCW stuff. But a lot of them are genuinely like indie kind of people. And even this Freedom Ramsey, real indie guy, they got him at a local show, not even like a high level indie. But it's interesting to see what they're doing. I still don't know where any of this is going or what any of it means. I imagine at some point we'll get a more in-depth look at how this breaks down, whether it's from the company itself or people working with it. But definitely cool to see some names get elevated and maybe have a brighter future.
So it's the thing with the WWE ID thing is that they've never, with these new signings in particular, especially the Kylie Rae one that just sticks out, there doesn't seem to be any kind of, clear direction about what it actually is or what it's meant to be. Because Kylie Rae is someone that has been in TNA, has been in AEW, albeit briefly, but like if she is consistently wrestling, you kind of know what you're getting with her, or at least like she's been established enough time that she doesn't really need a lot of quote unquote development. Like she's wrestled on television, she kind of knows what she's doing. So as long as she is like in a good place mentally and is prepared to be in that kind of position, then she should be someone that you just sign up to NXT or something along those lines, or for a few, like, I guess, jobber matches, just check her out and then say, okay, then we'll bring you in on a more permanent basis. So handing her a WWE ID contract kind of throws into a lot of confusion about what this thing actually is. Is it just essentially just handing this to people in the indies that you're kind of interested in but aren't super sure about, and so you're just giving yourself like a bit of breathing room one way or the other? is it the fact they've just signed Kylie Rae to this contract to generate buzz for the WWE ID thing because she's a name or a name that people will recognise, and so they've said, like, okay, we'll sign 1 or 2 people that have a bit more name value to these contracts to help generate a bit more buzz about them before we can go in real, like, the actual purpose of this thing. So, and then there's obviously the big thing that I think we spoke about in the past is that they announced they were partnering with, like, a group of wrestling schools about these WWE contracts, and then most of the people they've signed these contracts aren't affiliated to any of those schools.
Mm-hmm.
So it is essentially, like, what is this? Like, is it just a case of just handing people, like, in the grand things, pretty meaningless bits of paper that says, oh, you're a WWE ID talent now, and it doesn't really mean too much in the grand scheme of things because they could still go to AEW if they wanted to. I know the idea is that WWE would get, like, first refusal if AEW or someone else came knocking on their door to sign a contract for them, but it doesn't really seem to have a great deal of weight to it. I think that what would make a bit more weight to it is if AEW or Tony Khan announced that they're not going to, like, essentially announced that if somebody, an independent wrestler, signs a contract with WWE ID, a WWE ID contract, they're not interested in them anymore. To help, like, I guess, to help make it more of a decision that people have to think about, because right now there doesn't seem to be really any stakes in the people signing these contracts. It's like, okay, like, I'll continue working the independent circuit. I've got this contract which gives me seemingly a bit more of an easy route into WWE, but if I don't do that, then I can still go to AEW, I can still go to any other place. So realistically, me signing this contract doesn't really change the trajectory for me too much, other than potentially raises my chances of getting into WWE in the future. If then AEW or other wrestling promotions then say, okay, like, if you sign that contract, you'll never work for us, or, like, you won't work for us as long as you're under that contract, then it gives people a bit more of a decision to make about, okay, is this actually a good idea to do or not? But as I say, the group of people that they've signed so far is a mix of, you know, some interesting talents. As I say, I'm not super familiar with most of them. I know bits and pieces of, like, Marcus Mathers and stuff like that, but the Kylie Rae one just throws a little bit. It just seems like a weird outlier in that she shouldn't really be getting any kind of developmental deal at this point in her career.
Yeah.
So, as I say, certain people that they have hired in are in their early to mid 30s. Like, they're not developmental; they're like journeyman indie people. So there is no kind of categorization for this. And then also, to add another bit of confusion, when they announced that new class of people to join the Performance Center recently, that had independent wrestlers on it. It had Zarya in it. It had Lance Anoa'i in it. So it's like, okay, so, like, there is no kind of clarity about what exactly is a WWE ID contract. I think until they establish that, then we kind of just left a bit in the dark about it.
It has to be, and this is speculation, but the way that it's forming feels like, you know, it's not a WWE contract, but we're also telling you, we're going to tell these fuckers no if they try to get you, because we think that we might like you. Is that the kind of vibe I'm getting?
I'm going to look up the quote because I never know what it is exactly. I always have a different version of it in my head. But there's a quote from The Simpsons episode where Marge is going to go and do the whole pretzel wagon thing. And she says something along the lines of, like, becoming interested in whatever. Let me just double check about it. It's okay. Yeah, they jumped on the one franchise I might possibly have considered thinking about becoming interested in.
Well, exactly.
Like, that's kind of what this feels like. It's like, well, we were thinking about possibly giving them a tryout to see if we were interested in having them maybe sign a preemptive contract that is a first look thing to possibly join the Performance Center to become an NXT development person to then become a WWE superstar. And I mean, it might be a matter of them just making it a quicker, easier transition to get people from the indies onto their roster the way that, like, the NIL thing has been. for, you know, 1 or 2 people. Or it could be a way for them to flex that and say, if we put our fingers on you, that sounds awful. If we kind of tag you as a potential WWE person, that we then might be like, hey, maybe you shouldn't work an AEW show, and we can kind of pull those people away. But the only thing that they've done so far from this, that I've seen at very least, is that they announced for some show somewhere, it doesn't really matter, that 2 people are going up against each other, and they're calling it a WWE ID showcase match. As in, like, if it's, I don't know, Cold Brew Cappuccino Jones against Ice Williams. Let's just use the iced coffee tag team that we're making. If it was those 2 against each other, and it's like, okay, well, now this is the WWE ID showcase. And then that helps out the indie thing to be like, look, we got some WWE people potentially in here, and, you know, and it could work for all parties. It could be something that just fizzles out and all, but it's incredibly frustrating these days to try to figure out what the roster is, because they don't announce releases on the main roster. They certainly don't announce releases on the NXT roster. There are people that I have on my list of, like, are they even signed yet? Because there are reports of, like, Gabby Butler was a name, for instance, from like over a year ago, if not 2 years ago plus, where it was like, she's announced to have been signed. And I don't know anything about if she ever stepped foot in the Performance Center, let alone if she's still there. There's people that are injured that you maybe find out more information about it another time. There are people that are, like, in the NIL thing, but they're not. There's athletes that get signed to Performance Center deals and not NIL things. So the contracts are all, you know, chaotic and backwards fucked up in ways that I can't track anymore, to the point that I've even, on the index list of the heel and face turns, I've completely gotten rid of the NIL and WWE ID sections. I reached a point where I was like, I'm just going to put down under the to be determined and unknown a thing that says end the NIL people and the WWE ID people. It's not worth tracking. And I'm sure on the roster pages, there's going to be people that are still there that I don't have on there. There's going to be people that aren't there anymore that I still continue to have on there. I really, really wish they could go back to just having an actual roster page that worked well. Because even if you go to the NIL page, like the actual official page, they still have Gable Steveson listed. So that's out of date for sure. And anybody that's out there potentially listening, if you go to any of these press conference things and you can ask WWE, that would be a great thing to ask them. Be like, number 1, when are you going to update this aspect of your site? Number 2, when are you going to actually start releasing people in a way that, like, we know who's on the schedule and all this stuff? Like, is that BJ Ray guy? Like, is he even signed, or is he just a dude that hangs out? Like, I don't know.
Who's that?
That's the dude that was on that TV show that wasn't tough enough, but it was basically tough enough that nobody watched.
Was he the dude with the emoji outfit that, like, the girls put into a table?
Yeah.
That's funny.
His name's Braden something or whatever, and I think the name that he wanted to go by was Sexy BJ Ray. If I remember correctly, that was like what he wanted to, like, his gimmick was or something.
Yeah,
but I didn't watch the show.
Sexy DJ, that's
Sexy BJ Ray.
Yeah, quite the gimmick.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to keep track of these things, which that speaks to another quick thing. I mentioned this in the group chat. I mentioned this on Discord and stuff. Took a quick trip to the Performance Center the other day just to drive by, because I didn't realize how close I was. It was like maybe half an hour away from where I was in Orlando, and deceptively small and meek in a lot of ways. Like, I never would have pictured, when we were driving around the area itself, I was like, this doesn't look like the area that this would be in, like, at all. It's very, like, tiny residential homes, very, you know, okay, well, you drive down this road and you could just have, like, here's an auto parts kind of landfill thing, you know, like, So that already threw me off. And then when we're pulling down into the actual business park center, I was like, this just looks empty. There's all these empty buildings. And okay, that's the performance center, the little building in the back. It's very tiny. And you would think with all the footage of the parking lot, which I'm safe to say I was able to brave and not get into, nobody with a lead pipe attack me or anything. They fit like no cars. There's little alleys that are around there on the sides of the buildings. I couldn't see the very back of the building, but there's only room for like 10 cars in the front part. And then there's only room for maybe like one car on the side of the two sides of the building that I could see. It's really small. So maybe the back is huge. I don't know. But I figured, hey.
Maybe that's why there's so many attacks if it's so small. Maybe they're fighting over parking.
Maybe. And I didn't bump into anybody. I didn't see anybody that was out there. It was just a bunch of people that were working like crew or something. So
you also happened to take a flight with a WWE guy.
Yeah, I did. And when we were pulling out of the performance center, there was a Porsche with a license plate that I'm blanking on what it was. It was either Night 1 or something along those lines. So I don't know who that was, but if you're out there and you have a white Porsche and you pulled into the performance center the other day, we're on to you. I don't know. Let's talk about some trademark stuff here. Let's get into, WWE and AEW trademarks. So WWE trademarked a couple different things. Some of them aren't all that impressive. Like they trademarked RKO and Stephanie Vaquer and Zarya. Okay, sure. But they did trademark WWE LFG. And I first thought, okay, they're doing WWE Let's Fucking Go. And then it says WWE Legends and Future Greats.
But so, it's totally a take on Let's Fucking Go.
Yeah, it's 100% them trying to do that. And they also re-upped their trademark for Edge. I know that's been sparking some discussion online. So as far as WWE LFG, Legends and Future Greats, there's no real information of exactly what that is. It's the usual breakdown that, you can see the technical terms of like, this is in use of this type of service and all that kind of stuff. But even that, when we start trying to figure that out, a lot of the times we don't know what it means. And I would assume Legends and Future Greats is probably going to be some kind of a TV show. It's probably going to be one of those things that's on Peacock or whatever, where maybe it's Netflix. Maybe they get their own little documentary like WWE Rivals or something, and it just ends up being one of those things. Can't imagine it's really anything else. Maybe it's a YouTube thing or something, whatever. Legends and Future Greats could be interesting. We'll figure it out when they actually announce it. But I am disappointed it's not WWE Let's Fucking Go, because that'd be kind of cool. The Edge trademark, I've been seeing a lot of people debating about this, where some people are saying this is really petty. Why doesn't WWE just let that go? He should be able to use that and just go to, AEW, not as Adam Copeland. He should have been able to go as Edge. And then I could see the argument as well of, well, Edge is a WWE thing. They created that character. They have that trademark locked in for merchandising purposes. And in the future, if he were to come back to WWE, then I'm sure they'd work out some kind of a deal and sort that all out. But at the same time, why necessarily give it up and then make it harder for you in the future? If he does show back up in WWE, they already own the trademark. They don't have to worry about trying to negotiate that with him. I'm of like that middle ground, which in typical fashion, there's a gray area. So now both sides think I'm the worst person in the world. But
yeah, that's my job.
I do think if I were in WWE's shoes, I probably would have re-upped the trademark, to be perfectly honest. If there were something going on with Adam Copeland where he would have be like, look, guys, can you do me a solid? Can we just like settle this and let me have the Edge trademark? I'd probably talk to the lawyers and be like, well, let's sort something out. Let's just, in the grand scheme, are we going to use Edge when he's not in the company? I highly doubt it, because you can't really use his likeness to be doing that. So unless it's a matter of continuing to sell residual merchandise that they do still have, like old stock of Edge, and that could be a potential legal thing or something, you could just give it up.
I don't even understand why this is the conversation. They own the trademark. They're well within their right to, do that. And I don't think he's really missing the Edge name. I mean, sure, it'd be fun. Don't get me wrong. It'd be great if he could be Edge in AEW, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's looking for that. I think this is just them re-upping a trademark.
You don't think he's missing a certain Edge in AEW?
I don't. I think he actually found his edge and he tried to jump off a cage. That's why he's not wrestling currently.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not usually the one to side with the big corporation that holding like a trademark, but like, it's a character that they created. But the name Edge is their creation. Like, he can still be Adam Copeland. He can still use the Metalingus like theme music and all other stuff. Like, pretty much, he is still just the same guy. He just has to go with his given name instead. So yeah, I don't see any problem with WWE upping the trademark. I would say, it's a petty thing to do because they're not going to use it. But if they ever wanted to come up with like a some kind of documentary series or something on that about Edge, then they've still got the naming rights to it. So as long as Adam Copeland agree to them doing that, then I guess they can do what they want with it. But yeah, if the aim is just to have it and not do anything with it, it's petty. But as I say, it is their property to have. So, and it doesn't seem to affect anybody one way or the other, really. So I think people getting upset about him not having access to this name anymore and not be able to just trademark it as his own is just, it's just a little bit like just finding a reason to bash things for no real reason. Not that like they're bashing people for things that really nobody actually involved in the situation really care about.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, that's a regular thing. Fans can get way more upset over things that the actual people are just like, it's fine. And I mean, we've seen, I think, worst case scenarios before with other things too. Like, I do not equate this to being the same as the Cody Rhodes thing. That to me was like, just let him be Cody Rhodes. Come on. Does he have to be Cody? Does he have to be Cody Runnels? Give him a fucking break. And they eventually did. And, it all worked out in the grand scheme. But AEW trademarks, at least on the most recent thing that we were just double checking about this. Oh, we got construction noise going on. There you go. You get to listen to that again, everybody. Did you miss that? That's just popping up now. So it seems like they have trademarked Christmas Collision and Dynamite on 34th Street. And those seem, I mean, as pretty obvious as you can get. Those are episodes of Dynamite and Collision for the end of the year. And it's funny because I just recently put up a thing when they had announced that Winter is Coming was coming back. And that was a little bit shocking to me because we've had a few of those regular shows not show back up this year. Yeah, it's not me farting into the microphone. It's somebody doing a drill thing. They didn't do Fyter Fest this year. They didn't do Fight for the Fallen. And
no, they're doing Fight for the Fallen next year.
Did they announce that?
Yep. They announced that for January 1st. That is going to be the debut on Max. And it's going to help the victims of Hurricane Helene.
Ah, okay. So then it's just Fyter Fest. Huh.
Which is okay because it was a dated reference when they did it.
Oh, absolutely was. How many people at this point are really going to know what the Fyre Fest thing was, let alone on top of that think it's still funny to do Fyter Fest on, But they had that brand, they had that trademark all sorted out, so they could have continued that as time went on. And they have a few other ones that they didn't do, like they haven't done Beach Break, but then again, they called Orange Cassidy's moves Beach Break too. So they have the Road Rager that they didn't bring back after a little while. I don't believe they did St. Patrick's Day Slam this year. And they haven't announced anything for Holiday Bash or New Year's Smash. And it seems like, at the very least, Dynamite on 34th Street and Christmas Collision would take the place of what would normally be Holiday Bash. I'm fine
Those
with
are
it.
also taking place at the Hammerstein in New York.
Did they announce Bash and Smash?
Yeah, okay, so they, here, I'll give you a link. They announced shows for the end of the year, and they announced events through March.
Because last time I had checked, they hadn't announced anything with all that.
So they announced, like, for example, Revolution is going to be March 9, and it's going to be at the Crypto.com Arena, that are known as the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Dynamite, Final Battle, and Collision will all be at the Hammerstein in New York City, so that's cool, especially for Ring of Honor. But unfortunately for Ring of Honor, I've already seen people saying, I will go to my Collision and not Ring of Honor. So, maybe they should have thought that one through. Yes, and Fight for the Fallen is January 1st. That is the debut of simulcasting on Max. Very exciting stuff there. And they announced a bunch of other tapings as well in Arizona and Houston and things like that. I believe these are all smaller arenas as well to try to get a more intimate venue and a better crowd feel, because these crowds the way these venues are structured, they do not sound into it most times.
Yeah, that's been one of the big overarching criticisms about AEW recently, is because it's their insistence on running large arenas when their crowd size has been dwindling quite a lot in the last year and a half. So the move to more intimate venues where the lower attendances won't be as demonstrably bad for the actual atmosphere and the crowd quality. I think the last two Dynamites, particularly, the crowd's been absolutely terrible.
This past episode of Dynamite, we'll talk about it, just as flat as can be.
Yeah, it's really been negatively affecting it. So now they have the TV money secured for the long-term future, or short-term future, realistically, the next few years. There's not that much of a financial incentive to run the bigger buildings and try and get more people in that way, so they can go for the smaller places and try and improve the TV atmosphere based off of that. So I think that's a good move based on their current situation. And who knows, when you do start to hear, hopefully the acoustics get better and the crowds that turn up are far more invested in what's happening, then that helps translate to the television audience thinking that it's a hotter product than it currently feels like. And so that then leads to more ticket sales, makes it feel more of a difficult ask to get into AEW, because if you're running a smaller building, it means there's less seats available, which means that there's more demand to get seats there. Because if you're running a 10,000 seater building and you're really only expecting to get 2,000 or 3,000 people through the door, the other people can just say, oh, just sit and wait until the last week, when you're basically saying you're going to be giving away 2-for-1 tickets and all that other stuff. There's no incentive to buy early and get, unless you're one of the people that really wants to get onto the front two rows. There's really no incentive to make sure you get there. Whereas if you're in a smaller building, which might actually sell out or get close to selling out, then you've got a bit more incentive to buy quickly and buy the more expensive seats in that regard. So yeah, it's the right move for them to make at this point.
Absolutely. And it comes to the perception element that you had said, where how many weeks does it just get posted of, well, look at the crowd, and it gets posted on Twitter of an empty arena, or Ricochet left WWE to go to this crowd, that kind of a thing. So it does hurt. Even if it's just that portion of the audience, it makes it seem like they can't fill anything. And you had WWE, where you've got even NXT going to these bigger arenas than they've been, and they're doing pretty damn well on that front. You got to start swinging the momentum around, and the pendulum's got to go in the opposite direction at some point. I'm looking at this list that you had sent. I don't see them having Holiday Bash and New Year's Smash listed on here, though.
Yeah, because they're replacing it with Fight for the Fallen on New Year's Day and Christmas.
I thought you were saying that they had announced that those two.
No, I was just saying they've announced these events that.
So I mean, that's I'll have to go through and I'll add this to the list to go through and add these lists of these things. But yeah, it's good to have that stuff in advance. So Fight for the Fallen continues. St. Patrick's Day Slam, no. Fighter Fest, no. Holiday Bash, no. New Year's Smash, no. At least, and they might announce something like that. Like they could technically. I'm assuming that the December 21st edition of Collision is probably going to be the Christmas Collision one, and then that special taping for Dynamite on the 2nd or the 22nd in Hammerstein as well. That one's probably going to be Dynamite.
He's already confirmed that.
All right, so it's like those two could be like that. Now they could call the January 4th edition of Collision. They could call that New Year's Smash and bring that back, but I think that they've ran out of time when it comes to Holiday Bash, and you know. What's in a name? Well, we talk about it all the time. I was never the biggest fan of those names. They're better than some of the other names that AEW has. Like, I don't like Revolution as a name. I don't like Dynasty. You know, a couple other names. So, losing Holiday Bash? Losing New Year's Smash? Sure, whatever. St. Patrick's Day Slam. You can rearrange these terms around as much as you want. Christmas Collision, that's pretty bland. That's worse, I think, than some of the other stuff. But it really doesn't matter. And Dynamite on 34th Street. Sure. Yeah. In the grand scheme, I'm fine with it. It's good to Fight for the Fallen's coming back, though, if they're doing another charity thing, because they might as well. And, yeah,
How far are you from the Hammerstein?
Let's see. According to Google Maps, let's see, directions. Choose a starting point. My location. I can't be that quick. Oh, I guess if it's Manhattan Center and if that's, whatever.
Yeah, you're right there. That's why I asked.
Yeah, okay. I didn't realize. I thought that this was for some reason in a completely different area than it is. Yeah, I'm like a 15-minute train ride.
Well, there you go. You should go to Ring of Honor.
I could walk it in a little over half an hour.
Yeah, go to Ring of Honor.
Huh. I mean, Ring of Honor. I don't know. Yeah, Dynamite and stuff, like maybe.
Well, yeah, that's the joke. The joke is everybody was excited when Sean reported, hey, they're going to do the Hammerstein for Final Battle like old times, and then it immediately got eclipsed with, hey, we're doing Collision and Dynamite.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds really awful, but like if I got free tickets to Ring of Honor Final Battle and all, like, yeah, I'd go. I don't know if I'd pay for it. Walking 40 minutes? 40 minutes is a long time to walk. Spending $3 on a train ride back and forth. We're talking almost $10 there. Come on.
Wow. A whole $10 dudes.
Well, plus the tickets. I mean, unless you're giving me those tickets for free. Well, I'm going to have to write that down on my list now. Because who knows, maybe I get the opportunity to go and check that stuff out. I'd much rather watch the Final Battle pay-per-view in person than to watch it on my couch. I'll say that. We'll see. But the setup with that's on that front. There's a non-AEW thing that we could, well, it's AEW adjacent. They're a part of it. Before we start getting into a little bit more of just the AEW Full Gear card and all that. This is something that you're going to have to fill me in a little bit more on. The Wrestle Dynasty International Women's Cup that they're going to have a 4-way. It's going to include AEW, Ring of Honor, Stardom, and CMLL. And the quick little breakdown that we were talking about ahead of time, the 4 potential qualifying participants from CMLL have been settled. Is that right?
Yep. So essentially what this tournament is just essentially it's going to be a series of four-way matches, with each four-way match determining each promotion's representative. So AEW will have a four-way match, Ring of Honor will have a four-way match, CMLL and Stardom will have their qualifying matches, and then they'll all face each other for this International Women's Cup at the Dynasty show on January the 5th. So the representatives for CMLL have been announced as Zeuxis, Reina Isis, Persephone, and Sanely. I don't know how to pronounce her one. She's the one I'm least familiar with. This has appeared on a couple of episodes of AEW TV. She wrestled Mercedes Moné earlier this year. She also wrestled I'm trying to remember which. Was it just Mercedes? It was in the build up to the Stephanie Becker match.
I think she might have wrestled in like an episode of NXT or something too.
She's in the Mae Young Classic or something.
That's what it was, I guess. Yeah.
Then you have Reina Isis, I know, has wrestled a couple of times in Ring of Honor over the last month or two. I think it was just a case that they were just crossing over because they sometimes do that. I mean, the most recent episode of Ring of Honor had a lot of people from New Japan appearing on it because they'd recently come over for their the US show. So they were in the vicinity and decided, I'll just do an extra Ring of Honor show here. Persephone I've seen bits and pieces of, but nothing major. And I've not really heard anything of Sanely before, so I have to see what that is. I mean, I think the likelihood is it's going to be one of Zeuxis and Reina Isis that wins that match because they have done stuff with either Ring of Honor or on AEW TV. So they're probably the ones that they have the better relationship with, so probably the ones they're more likely to go through. But you never know. As I say, this is just a CMLL representative, so CMLL will assume will get a big say in choosing who they get to appear in this match. And obviously they have strong relationships with both AEW and New Japan, so there's no real kind of issue there. But I'm surprised that there's not... the one that I'm surprised is not going to be in it is Catalina.
Yeah, because she's really good.
Yeah, and she recently beat Toni Storm in a match in CMLL as well, so I'm surprised that she's not been put on in a bit more of a prominent position with this one, but I guess they decided to go with some other people instead. Again, it's probably CMLL's choice about who they want to promote in this one, so they don't really have much other say in it, but yeah, I was a bit surprised that Carolina didn't get this opportunity.
So who do we think are the possibilities for the other side? Stardom, I have no clue whatsoever who would even be on that roster, so I can't talk on that front.
Well, it varies. I mean, Mina Shikara is part of Stardom, so technically, at the very least, I know she's going to be appearing on AEW quite a bit, but she is a Stardom roster member, so there is a good chance that she would be the choice for that. But Stardom is full of very talented women's wrestlers. It depends on what they will kind of want to do. But it's similar with the fact that checking, Zeuxis is the current CMLL Women's World Champion, Reina Isis won the International Women's Grand Prix, and Persephone is their Universal Champion, Sanely is their National Champion. So basically they've picked a load of their champions or people that have done something of significance recently and put them all into this one match together. So if Stardom was to take a similar approach, you're probably looking at Tam Nakano, who's the current World of Stardom champion. Could then be looking at someone like, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head who the current list of champions are. I haven't checked out Stardom in a little while, so let's see who they've got currently listed. I mean, so the current champions, you've got Tam Nakano as their world champion, you've got Natsupoi as their Wonder of Stardom champion, which is kind of their Intercontinental belt. Got May Sarah as their high speed champion, very good wrestler as well. You got obviously Mayu Iwatani, who's the New Japan Women's World Champion as well, so they could go with that. I say that you don't really have too many there aren't too many bad choices to go with the Stardom one. It just depends on how big of a platform they want to give to this one. It also depends on because obviously the show is a combination of a lot of different promotions, whether there's going to be another women's match, whether there's going to be a Stardom or a New Japan women's title match on the show, irrespective of this taking place as well. So it just depends on who is the more who are the most pressing people to get that they want to get on screen, get onto a show of this magnitude, and in order to be like, okay, you are Stardom's representative for this one, I'd probably, if she's not going to defend her world title, I probably would say that Tam Nakano is probably the most significant name for it. But if Mayu Iwatani's not going to defend her New Japan Women's World title, I'd probably say she's the top one for Stardom. She's like the Stardom ace icon, whatever you want to refer it, and then Tam Nakano underneath it, and then you could pretty much just choose a lot of really good people underneath it. Azumi, Mai Sera, Suzu Suzuki. There's a lot of really good talent there that could definitely easily fill that spot. So
on the ROH front, I mean, that's kind of a 50-50 split. Who do you have that technically it can be AEW representative? Who can you put in ROH? There aren't many people that are definitively just they only stick to one or the other. Mostly it tends to be people from AEW don't go over to ROH, but you know, you can see like, say, a Queen Aminata could be, okay, that's going to be our ROH representative. Or she could be in a qualifying match for the AEW side of it, and it wouldn't be crazy. I mean,
the Ring of Honor
depends on how much they want. Like you said, like how much do they really want to put on the major people? How many people do they want to put? You want to give this to like an Athena and have her walking in as a champion, or do you want to have it be like a Layla Hirsch or something?
Well, Athena won't be champion going into this one because she'll have lost its final battle to Billy Starks by that point. Because that obviously takes place in December, the final battle show. So by the time that January 5th comes around, the likelihood is that Athena won't be your women's world champion anymore. I think you need to put Athena in this match. Like, regardless, like there's other people, obviously you could put Billy Starks in it. Like Diamante is more of a Ring of Honor choice. You have people like Layla Hirsch, Rachel Ellering, people like that that are more tied directly to Ring of Honor than they do appear on any AEW shows. But I'd say that you should probably just put Athena in this match because she is essentially what Ring of Honor has been for the last 2 years. It's all kind of built around Athena, so it feels right that she would be their representative for this match.
Yeah, I would probably put Billy if Billy's not champion. But that's a big if because I think she should be.
It wouldn't shock me though if they were to go with like, let's put Hikaru Shida in there, or let's put Nyla Rose in there, like any name person that they can put in there and just say, well, that's going to be the person that's going to represent ROH. And then the same when it comes to AEW. You know, I mean, AEW has plenty of different people that they can put in there. It's who's busy, who's not, who's a big enough name, who's too big of a name. Like, they're not going to put, say, like Mercedes Moné isn't going to be the representative for AEW in that. But it could be Jamie Hayter. Or it could be, I don't know, like Deonna Purrazzo. Or it could be Serena Deeb, or anybody that could relatively make. Anna Jay could be in one of these things, you know. I guess when they announce those, we'll talk about who we think is going to end up winning, who's going to be a part of that. But that should transition us to talk about Toni Storm a little bit, because Toni Storm is quote unquote claiming to have been retired from pro wrestling now, and I mean, she's not. So it's like, it's stupid that that's getting the kind of traction that it is. Like, that's not happening. And the only thing that I had seen a follow-up from that was somebody asking Tony Khan about it, and Tony Khan being like, well, I think she's got some more time left and all that, just in case people would be thinking that she's actually gone. But
first of all, she's timeless.
True.
So you're already wrong, Tony. And second of all, yeah, she's not retiring. That'd be silly. I think we all fully expect her to appear this Saturday at Full Gear as part of the Champagne celebration.
Yeah, I'm still expecting that to be the case.
Yeah, this is just a way of like just building up a bit of anticipation for it by making it seem like just putting her name back into the attention before the moment happens. Probably just to try and get a few more like potential eyeballs on the show, because if people are really invested in the Toni Storm character and have missed her and have not really been tuning in as much without her being there, then this basically just gives you that final wink to say like, oh yeah, she's definitely going to be at that show. So if you want to see her, then make sure you buy the pay-per-view. But
it'd be funnier if she did retire that way, by just like, yeah, I lost at CMLL, I lost in AEW, I'm a loser, I'm done. It'd be funnier.
Never wrestles again.
Like, yeah, that was it.
Tired of being a loser. The end.
I mean, the thing that's obviously the most funny about this is the fact that she's billed to appear on a CMLL show in the middle of December. So,
hard subject to change.
Yeah, that's true. But but also I guess what's in some instances would be seen as funny, but also seen as like just incredibly sad and depressing, is how many people have taken this story to be like a serious wrestling story.
Yeah, for real. I want it to end. Really, I do. There's people don't read anymore. It's just a headline.
It really is. The most sensational headline you can get, as long as you can get somebody to click on it for a split second, that's all that matters. And then, everybody reads the headline and they go, well, you got to write the article. So then if you don't format your headline correctly, then everybody just takes that as a fact. And
well, let's say like that's part of you can understand why certain people would have just led with a headline saying Toni Storm retiring, because that gets you clicks.
100%.
Because people aren't aware of that thing and they can just go into it. But then the people that actually then write the article and then just basically try and reinforce that, you can kind of tell people that don't actually, that are writing this stuff, that don't actually watch wrestling or don't actually know anything about wrestling, because they just, write it almost verbatim as in like this is an actual thing rather than what is clearly a storyline. But it's also more about a thing of like, why are a lot of the news sites like either buying into this or using or helping fuel the storyline? It's like, this is an AEW storyline. Like, you don't have to add a lot of weight or credence to it. Like, just like, like this is just something that should just appear as part of like an AEW thing, whereas they put it out into the news cycle and essentially just letting the wrestling media do their hard work for them. Like, they've not mentioned Toni Storm at all on TV, or at least not referenced the fact that she retired. They didn't mention that at all on Dynamite, I don't think. Not that I recall, anyway.
I think it happened after Dynamite.
Okay, but in which case, like, there should at least be like, there should have been a segment maybe on the show basically saying that like Toni Storm's retired, or because that's like, if you're trying to build up anticipation for it for the show, the best way of doing that is by featuring it on the Dynamite prior to the show. So, but instead they've decided to go through, we'll try and just plug it as like a story for the media, and an embarrassing number of people within the media have treated it like a story. So, you at least know, at least the good ones have at least just, presented it as like a tongue-in-cheek thing. Like, Toni Storm is claiming to be retiring, and then reference the fact that, she's wrestling in CMLL in a couple of weeks' time. Just like, okay, yeah, we know there's a storyline. Or basically saying, she's expected to appear at Full Gear, or she's predicted to appear at Full Gear. So,
it might be the thumbnail for this podcast. I don't know. I don't know. It's one of the three options.
Toni Storm retiring? Question mark.
Yeah. Toni Storm retire?
It's one of the 3 or 4 options that I've been mulling over.
What's the Sports Keto one? They'll put her age. They'll be like 33 AEW, 33-year-old AEW star retires.
I mean, the
recent AEW champion retiring.
Well, I hate it. I mean, the worst ones are the ones that put like a bio of Toni Storm in the article. Like, it's like that. They're the ones that like treating it as if it's verbatim and like saying like Toni Storm joined AEW back in 2021 and has won the women's championship 3 times. It's just like,
well, they're doing that for 2 reasons. They're doing that for 2 reasons. Number one, to like potentially cover their ass if it ends up being real and they don't, fully buy into it and all that other kind of content wise on that front. And they're doing it too because it's a very easy way to throw more word count in and not have to write the article as much.
And you'll get SEO hits for the bio.
Yeah, but like
I hate the content era. Like
it's fucking awful. It's so bad.
For a while about that because I just despise it.
Yeah. Yeah, so here's at least 3 people that do not anticipate she is retiring at all, but hey, it might be the thumbnail for all I'm aware. Let's talk about some updates for the Full Gear card. They actually, funny enough, they didn't announce any of these on Dynamite, as we were talking about the idea being like, they might announce some stuff on Dynamite that changes the card up. Well, one of them hasn't been announced at all yet, but it seems like it's going to be announced potentially tonight on Rampage. One of them was only announced afterward as just like, I guess we're just going to put this on social media. Hate that with a passion too. And the other one's just another social media thing too, but the 3 adjustments to the Full Gear card right now, one being Paul Walter Hauser is going to be on the 0 hour kickoff, pre-show, buy-in, et cetera, whatever you're going to call it. For those who don't know, Paul Walter Hauser is the guy that's been in Cobra Kai. He's wrestled some matches here and there. He was in the documentary about the Olympic bombing. I'm blanking on the name of it. Richard something or whatever. He's going to be in the new Fantastic Four movie. He's a good actor, and he really is passionate about pro wrestling. So, throw him on the pre-show. Sure, he can talk about stuff. That's cool. They are going to have an international championship match. Konosuke Takeshita is going to defend his title against Ricochet, and seemingly Anna Jay versus Deonna Purrazzo will be added to the 0 hour. That's just for the sake of throwing another women's match on there, throwing more matches on the pre-show as it is. In typical fashion, you need 15 plus matches on an AEW show. So I'm excited to watch Ricochet Takeshita. That'll be a good match. I'm assuming Takeshita retains. Purrazzo and Jay, maybe it'll be good, maybe not. It's not going to get as much of a focal point for me at the very least.
Ricochet Takeshita should rule, right? Like, it should be a great match. Maybe one of the best on AEW pay-per-view this year. I think he could win. I wouldn't give him the win, but he could become the new international champion. And then Jay and Purrazzo should be a strong win for Purrazzo, and I wish they were doing more with her, but you guys already know that.
Yeah, had a flashback to Del Rio.
Ricochet. Ricochet as Takeshita match will be one of the 2 or 3 best matches on the show because those 2 are awesome, and it's right that they should have the match for the national championship. And I think Takeshita will retain. Ricochet's going after Zack Sabre Jr. in the IWGP World Championship at Wrestle Dynasty, likely. So I guess that he doesn't need to win the title here. He can suffer his first defeat against Takeshita. That's no harm really there, and they get to continue on their own separate paths. Maybe Ricochet ends up in the Continental Classic off the back of this. Who knows? But I think that the Anna Jay Deonna Purrazzo match, as I say, I don't think that will get as much spotlight. They'll probably be on the 0 hour. I guess the most interesting aspect of that will probably be at least we get to see, hopefully, come to fruition this Deonna Purrazzo stable that they've been rumoring about. Obviously, we know that she's in a partnership with Ty Valkyrie, but there was kind of the spec they're going to build more of a stable around her. So she probably should get a win out of this in order for that to be the case. But it just depends on if there's other people going to be involved. Maybe even the case of having Deonna Purrazzo and Ty Valkyrie team up on Anna Jay and use that to get the advantage with the numbers going over her. That might signal the return of Ty Mello at some point, because she's been doing stuff in the ring, or at least been posting stuff about her doing stuff in the ring, and she's been away for a while, obviously with the maternity leave. So maybe that could be a signal for a tag team match down the line. So, but at the very least, hopefully it at least gets this Deonna Purrazzo thing off the ground, because it's just been a load of really nothing promo segments and video snippets for the time being. There hasn't actually been any real development with her.
Sorry for the lull, everybody. I was trying to block my microphone from some of this noise of this background stuff. Yeah, I mean, we do still have time for there to be even more adjustments to the card. And, you know, as we keep saying all the time, if there are more things to talk about, then we will talk about that when it comes down to it. But I'm assuming, based off of the spoilers of the Rampage episode that's going to air tonight and the next week's episode, because they recorded 2, that they probably aren't going to announce anything else unless it's just Excalibur really quickly being like, and also added to the card, it's going to be Atlantis Jr. versus so-and-so. And also added to the card, it's going to be, you know, I don't know, Top Flight against such and such or whatever. But we'll talk about that on Saturday, if that's around it. On the Dynamite recap of some things, I mean, they didn't really do much to add to the Full Gear card to really be like, all right, this is like, that's a big game changer or whatever. Like, Orange Cassidy beats Wheeler Yuta, and they end up, you know, doing the whole build to that Moxley match in a way that it's pretty by the book. And Bobby Lashley beat Cheeseburger, and I forget who the other one was. As just like a showcase match for him to squash 2 people in a handicap thing and have some back and forth with Swerve Strickland getting attacked from behind and all. Statlander beat Hikaru Shida to give her a little bit of a boost before she inevitably loses that match to Mercedes Moné tomorrow. It's mostly that. Like, this was a very flat episode of Dynamite for the most part for me. The action itself wasn't necessarily bad, but it felt like, for a show that had 5-6 matches on it and a lot of vignettes and like video package material, I don't feel like anything happened on the episode.
From what I saw, I liked some of the bits and pieces. Like, I enjoyed, you know, Claudio and Darby. I was very happily surprised to see Claudio get the win there. The advancements with Daniel Garcia and Jack Perry, I wasn't crazy about, because it's like, okay, so they kidnapped him and they abandoned him in some area, just left him there. So how did he get to the pay-per-view? But I can let go of that. Like, I watched enough, you know, silly wrestling to get over that. The only thing that I can't get over, and I really want to talk about a little bit, is Mercedes Moné is just not clicking with me, man. And it's really pissing me off, because you guys know how much I loved when she was Sasha Banks.
Yeah, I mean, I would go so far to say that this is a pretty bad episode of Dynamite in general. I think that there were good things on it. The 8-man tag match, the start of it was a really good match, and Claudio versus Darby Allin was a great match, because those two just have great matches in Darby. It's kind of perfect opponents, because Claudio just throws people around, and Darby Allin likes being thrown around by people, so that's kind of the perfect combination. But I think a load of the promo segments, the other stuff, just sucked. The Adam Cole segment with Kyle O'Reilly was bad. Kyle O'Reilly can't really cut a promo that well, and Adam Cole doesn't seem to I'd say I'm not invested in him fighting MJF, and beyond that point, I'm not invested in a Undisputed Era reunion. It's like, you know, it's not 5 years ago anymore. Like, move on, do something different. It's just it just demonstrates how little there is kind of going for them. They feel like they have to return to the wheelhouse again to that thing and just go back to the third or fourth reunion of this group. So I'm not super invested in that. I thought Roderick Strong's promo was even worse later on in the show, because he was doing the mix of trying to cut a really serious promo on MJF, but wearing his stupid goofy glasses and shouting Max down the microphone is you know, it's like if a cartoon character in the middle of Animaniacs or something like that gives you a PSA about drug use or something like that. It's just just doesn't the tone's just off.
It was bad enough that, you know, I mean, I've said before, my wife doesn't watch wrestling in any kind of way, the same way, but, you know, she'll be sitting around and all, and the promo was bad enough that she was like, this promo sucks. I was like, okay, she's calling out Roderick Strong on just it not being a good promo.
Yeah, but as I said, the Mercedes Moné thing was bad. Like, she's cutting pretty weak promos, and she didn't look that great in terms of like just trying to in the ring with Statlander for that little exchange either. I think they've just killed all her like aura as a top star. I'd say it's a mix of both the booking of her and her performance is just being flat in general. That just hasn't worked out at all. I mean, I think the match, at least, because like should be good, because I don't think Mercedes has had like bad matches, but she's just had a lot of bad segments, and that kind of affects the excitement surrounding her matches. And yeah, I think that it's one of those things where the Jen Pepperman thing has helped like put a bit more spotlight on the women's segments, but overall a large number of those segments aren't very good, and I think that's because they are very like bad WWE writing. And it's like, I'm not criticizing like WWE in general, but it's the bad WWE like 2019 WWE writing. So it's not that terrible, but it's not good by any stretch of imagination. Like the whole segment of like someone strangely enough dressed like Swerve Strickland, but backstage, like who dresses like Swerve Strickland other than Swerve Strickland, and so like, and they just attack him behind the scenes. It's like, okay, like Jericho and Mariah May literally just being an act that shakes their tits. That's kind of what they are as characters at this point.
Yeah, if anybody didn't see that, he's not even exaggerating. Like they just were like,
that's literally what they do.
Yeah, so for anybody that's like, oh, you're diminutizing them to no, they are. They are doing that.
Watch the build for Mina Shirakawa versus Holly Cameron, which is literally both of them just shaking their tits at each other and saying that they've got the bigger bust. Like that is Mina Shirakawa's character in AEW, which is, I know that's part of her character from her time in Stardom. That's pretty much the whole thing that she built a lot of her Stardom thing with, that she had larger assets than a lot of the other women on the roster. But she's more than that as a character. So like, I think they should probably do a better job of presenting her like that. But maybe that's what she just wants to do, or maybe that's how they're just getting her through the door. But like the Big Boom AJ and Big Justice stuff, that doesn't do anything to me or any other wrestling or any other real wrestling fan. I know that everyone's super excited because it got over 3 million views on like or YouTube or whatever, but it's like none of those people are actually going to watch beyond them being on this show.
No,
so it doesn't matter.
Look, I get it. Like, I understand. So many people are like, well, you have to look at it like this and think about how WWE made their name in the 80s, and like, I understand that, but I also just want to reserve the right to be like, yeah, this sucks. Like, I will say I got a kick out of a grown man just saying, Renee, it may have started 20 years ago for QT Marshall, but for me, everybody threw the double chunk, I lost my mind laughing so hard, because like, why is this on TV?
It was a sad thing. Is like, it definitely shouldn't be on TV. But what was doubly sad about it, that he probably cut the best promo of the entire night.
Oh yeah, he's very good.
So
that's the thing, is like, he is a professional wrestler first, so he does kind of deliver promos in a way that you're like, oh yeah, he came up in a time where guys knew what they were doing. That's the sad part.
But then, like, the abduction stuff is bad. Like, again, that's just stupid, like, pandemic era stuff, really. It was like, well, again, you go back to these segments, and they're all hokey. Of like, I'll go with WWE because they're the first thing that's in my mind. But like the fucking Paul Bearer abduction by Edge, and they build up to the feud with Kane. It's like, all this stuff is shit, and it's just like, why do I care that Garcia took a wrench to Jack Perry's van? I don't care about that van. Who cares about the van? Tomohiro Ishii and Jericho just walking around the arena for a while. That was just a massive.
That popped Tony, I'm sure.
That got me from 3 different levels. It started out going, well, this is stupid. And then I was like, all right, this is getting to the ridiculous level where I'm finding it funny. And then it went, all right, knock it the fuck off. It's stupid again.
Yeah.
Because, like, by the time they got to, I think it might have been, like, pre-entering the arena section of it, then I was, like, thinking, all right, it's kind of funny that this is continuing this long backstage. And they got to the arena, and then it was, like, the pen thing, and then the brawl. I was like, all right, never mind. You lost all of the positive will that I was going to give you guys. It just went the opposite of the way that a lot of jokes go, where sometimes it'll continue to go back around to being funny again after a long amount of time. Like the best equivalent that I can give it is that Family Guy joke of the Peter falls and he's going where I'm like, to me it was like, it's funny, it's not funny, it's funny, it's not funny, it's really not funny, it's really not funny, guys, oh my god, it's not fucking funny. And then like it just got worse and worse like that. If they would have continued it, I'm sure I wouldn't have turned back around and I would have thought it was funny again. But it was awkward because to me, I was like waiting to write up some stuff about things that they would announce, thinking that they were going to announce some more pay-per-view matches, or that they would announce like stuff for Collision or whatever, before I thought that, you know, didn't realize that they weren't going to do Collision. And I'm looking around just kind of going like, why aren't they announcing anything? Why are we just like wasting time with Julia Hart shooting an arrow backstage and being like melodramatic? And
those are cool. I like those.
I'm not liking it. I think this is all hokey. And like you said, the Jack Perry thing, I thought that was awful. And I like Daniel Garcia. I like Jack Perry. Like, there's not, you know, I'm not crapping on them for the sake of crapping on them. But I was just like in the same boat that you did, where I don't give a shit about the van.
Well, as I don't like Jack Perry's character right now. Like I say, I know that he has good matches, but I think that he's struggling a bit. And it's the issue with Jack Perry is that like he can work and he can do some good things even in this character, but he's a bit, I don't know, like directionless right now. I think that he'll end up being part of the Death Riders eventually, and maybe that'll give him a bit more of a clearer focus. But right now he's just a bit over the top, but not in a good way. And that's affecting Daniel Garcia a little bit. It's like bringing him down to that level, which isn't working out. But as I say, they'll have their match, and the match itself will be good. As I know, this is really dampening my expectations for Full Gear, because literally it's just a case of AEW pay-per-views for the most part always deliver in terms of just in-ring quality. So I don't think that they're going to have any bad matches. It's just, well, there might be one or two, but it's not, none of the matches are particularly exciting or or super exciting, but it's more of a case of, I'm sure the matches will be good though, so I'll still enjoy it from that perspective. But then you have the main event thing with Orange Cassidy and Wheeler Yuta, which I thought was, you know, it's an okay match, but it wasn't anything special. And then the end of it, like tying Orange Cassidy's arms to his side, and then just having like forming like a bully circle around him, just kicking him around a little bit. Like, that's not really like a pretty impactful angle to have for your main event coming into the pay-per-view. Like, realistically, there should be the thing where Orange Cassidy, like, you know, shows up Jon Moxley a little bit, and so you're left thinking, oh, can he beat Jon Moxley? But they've decided to go the route of Orange Cassidy wants to do this all on his own, and he's not going to lay down for Jon Moxley. It's like, well, yeah, he's going to lose though. You've done nothing to give us the indication. You've given us nothing to give the indication that he's not going to lose.
No, it's funny that you think of it that way, because it really is. That is kind of how they're doing it. They're being like, he's going to lose, but man, is he going to lose? Like,
yeah, okay. It's like he's going to lose, but he'll get up after he's lost, and he'll be right back afterwards. Yeah, so I'd say I think that I'm now more firmly in my resolve that like they should present this as a squash match, or like just, you know, like an extended squash match, almost similar to the Moxley Punk match they did a couple of years back. Like, you know, have it a bit more like Orange Cassidy gets a bit of a flurry in, but then Moxley just wails into him and finishes him off pretty quickly. Because I think that just will send a more impactful message about their group, and I think that's the best thing you can get out of this now. Because I think you aren't going to rehab Cassidy to the point where he feels like he's going to be a world championship contender at least not for the next few months anyway. So use him as an opportunity to build up the group a bit more. Like have him take out Cassidy. Cassidy could do with like a couple of months off, just take him off TV for a little while, and then he can come back and he'll feel more fresh and over if he's been away for a couple of months due to getting injured at the hands of the Death Riders here, and it makes the Death Riders feel more menacing and more destructive as a force if they take out one of their most beloved stars that's basically been like an ever present ever since AEW started. That can just feed into their message of we're bringing, you know, pro wrestling back to AEW, or like we need to create a new vision for AEW, and part of that involves taking guys like Orange Cassidy out. So if they do that, then that could be pretty impactful. But I realise that they're probably just going to have a normal match. Moxie's going to win, and then Orange Cassidy will just be back on TV the next week as part of the conglomeration, just doing stuff. Yeah. So yeah,
I agree that they need to do something, because right now it seems like they've just been hanging for weeks and weeks on the idea of we're taking over. And it's like, well, you're already the champion, and you are the trios champions, and you're beating people up on a regular basis. But when are you going to take over then? Like, what's going to change? Nothing's changed. They just keep hanging around being like, we're going to be rough and tough and do shit. Okay, well, then you got to send a message, and not a message of I beat somebody down and next week, or even on Collision, that they're upset about it and that they're going to try to, you know, fight back or something. No, something needs to happen where there's a definitive shift in something. And I wouldn't want it to be at Orange Cassidy's expense, but it's the guy that they put in this position. He needs to lose in a way that doesn't make him look like shit, but in a way that makes them look like, okay, something's happening now. I don't know if I really feel confident that's going to happen, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are not wrong. It's one of those things where I can't get into the main event of this show. Like, I'm excited for the show in the sense that AEW pay-per-views rarely ever miss, but it's just not. It's not the most exciting card they've ever presented, because so much of it feels like a foregone conclusion, you know? And like you said, Orange Cassidy's going to lose. There's no way that you think that he's even remotely going to win. He might put up a fight, and it might be, you know, worth it for like the diehard AEW fans. And I don't mean Callum. I mean like people who just genuinely think they can do no wrong. You know, like they'll love anything they present. But I would rather see somebody who has a chance go up against Moxley, because at least then you've got a bit of a fight on your hands. This just feels like a holding pattern until they decided to give it to Darby, or if not Darby, like what, Omega? And I think we're a bit of a ways from that.
I'd say I don't think this is like a like AEW is dying, that kind of like, oh, I'm done with AEW type thing. No. But it's like, but yeah, they had a bad episode, and it's a shame to do that right before the pay-per-view. And I think the pay-per-view is probably going to do pretty badly by their standards, buy-wise, because I just don't think there's enough heat going into that pay-per-view. But don't worry, guys. I've just seen announced on Blue Sky that on a Rampage, QT Marshall and Big Boom AJ are going to have a weigh-in.
Okay, but look.
So that will finally.
We need to know how much the guy weighs in reference only to double chocolate cookies. All right, that's the guy's got the cookies on his tights. I am so mad that he has probably put more thought into this one moment than some of the top wrestlers in WWE or AEW have put into the last 2 years of their career. Because, like, he just never thought he'd get this break. In some ways, that's admirable, and in some ways, I'm like, get it off my TV.
If you really want to turn people to just be like, controversy equals cash, and there's no such thing as bad press, do a weigh-in for everybody else, for the kids, like Rizzler and stuff, and just make it like, all right, it's fucking terrible.
Jesus, Tony.
Villain era Tony Mango coming out. Let's talk about NXT. Let's round this out. Some NXT.
Speaking of content for
we know some people that have qualified for the Iron Survivor Challenge now. Some more people, I should say, not just some people. We knew a couple beforehand. Nathan Fraser, I'm surprised, defeated Eddie Thorpe. And this led to a thing with later on. They're going in this story. They're going to turn Eddie Thorpe heel. And it's going to be the frustrated, I keep talking to the general manager and I keep wanting to get a shot, but at the same time, the general manager is just doing their job by saying, get the fuck away from me. You haven't done anything in months, if not years. Okay, I'll give you a chance, and you failed. It's your fault, you dumbass. I've never liked the Eddie Thorpe character. They've tried a couple different times. He's not connecting with me, but this isn't going to work for me either. But he was upset about that later on. It ended up being a thing where, because Tony D'Angelo had also beaten Brooks Jensen and Sean Spears took out D'Angelo. So D'Angelo wanted a match with Spears, and Ava's like, cool. And Thorpe's like, you can give him his thing, but not me. And like, it's lame.
He had a point though. Why is Sean Spears getting a match? Just because his guy lost? And like,
no,
okay,
see,
so
he doesn't have a point though. That's the thing. It's because Tony D'Angelo requested the match. Tony beat Brooks, and he was just like, I want to defend my title against Sean Spears. And Thorpe's like, how come you give the champion who won a match the option of doing that, and you don't give me a chance to lose a second time?
In that layout, Eddie Thorpe is just whiny, and Tony's a bit stupid for why you giving this man a title shot.
Yeah, Thorpe is just whiny, and Tony D'Angelo is just being stupid.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah. Speaking of stupid, there was a thing. I didn't like this. Roxanne Perez was at a beach and she's like, I'm taking a break, and you can all hang out and try to figure out who's going to lose to me next. And then Sol Ruca popped up, just happened to be right exactly where she is at the beach, right at the exact same time. Look, it's wrestling, it's hokey, it's stupid, all that kind of stuff, whatever. But they're trying to make it seem more like Sol Ruca is the focal point coming out of this. So some other people that had qualified for the Iron Survivor, Stephanie Vaquer beat Jada Parker due to some interference from Lola Vice. Zarya beat Ren Sinclair. Not quite a squash, but as close to it as you could get without it being a squash. And the setup for next week and the final matches, we don't know all of them 100%, but we know we're going to have Julia up against Kelani Jordan. And there is going to be another match with Axiom against Ethan Page. So they did a whole thing with Axiom and Nathan Fraser being like, oh, if we win, we're gonna end up going up against each other. And they really like the idea of these two being a tag team that does not get along. They've proven that they can coexist. So I don't know where that's gonna go in the future, but I am assuming at this point, since they didn't bother to announce the actual final qualifying match, that we're going to get some sort of last chance battle royal or something for the two different spots, or, 4-way matches or whatever it might be. And that's going to be where you get in like an Eddie Thorpe, or you get in somebody like a Jada Parker or somebody, whoever on those fronts. They had some other little segments that really are not worth getting super into, like Lexis King talking about how depressed he is and stuff to Yoshiki and Amora. NXT is a crazy place. The tag team division's brawling for like an hour straight. Carmen Petrovic and Ashanti the Adonis won their mixed tag match. Flirted a little more backstage. Nikita Lyons popped up immediately after a segment where she had been fighting with everybody else, by the way. Where it ended up being like she couldn't have gotten really backstage there that fast, but sure. And was just sort of like, hey, you want to fuck later, or whatever she had said to Ashanti, and text me later and we'll bang or something. I don't know. So they're doing that story. They're continuing that. The biggest thing, we also have Tatum Paxley's going to lose her match against Fallon Henley next week for the North American Championship. The biggest thing, though, and this last topic for us for this hot tags, Ridge Holland, as expected, beat Andre Chase. He is the new #1 contender. He is going to have his match against Trick Williams at the next show. And deadline aside, this means that Chase University has to go away. I'm assuming we're going to get some sort of farewell segment on next week's episode, because they ended this episode with it being like everybody downtrodden and just, oh my God, that's the result. So they'll probably next week pack up everything and everybody says their goodbyes or whatever. I am not sure where they're going to go from here, but I am, to be perfectly honest, doom and gloom, nervous that a bunch of people are going to get released, because we've seen this happen before. And I don't know if they're going to be able to sustain separate pushes for Andre Chase, Thea Hale, Duke Hudson, and Riley Osborne. Somebody's getting the axe within the next 6 months. At least one of them. I would be shocked if that's not the case. Not hoping for it.
You went from villain era to Doom prophecy era, Tony Mango. There.
Yeah, that's very much me. I don't want that to happen. I don't want anybody to lose their jobs and stuff, but just based off of the track record and the way that history has shown us, WWE struggles to do pushes for 2 people when they split in a tag team. They're not going to have the resources to push 4 people. Whether that is like Duke Hudson's been around too long and we don't want to renew his contract because we think that he's already maxed out the peak of what he can get. Same with Andre Chase, where it's like, well, Riley Osborne hasn't really clicked and he's been around for a shorter time frame, but he still is not as prominent of a character. I mean, Thea Hale has done plenty of stuff on her own, so she might be a little bit safe. Actually, I would think that Thea Hale's probably the safest out of the 4 of them. But I don't know. I don't have a good faith that this is going to work out well for people going forward.
I hope that it's not as, apocalyptic for them as you're suggesting, but I was initially worried myself because Andre Chase almost immediately tweeted out, "Thank you all. I always needed you. You never needed me." And I was like, I don't. Then he followed that up later with one like, "How can I move on and be a leader now that I don't have anything to lead?" So I'm hoping that they don't let him go because he's great and he is great. And there's always room for a flippy guy. And Duke Hudson's got character. Like, there's a way to make it work for them. And I don't want to just jump to, well, they're all fucked. But time will tell.
They haven't been watching NXT for a while, Callum, so obviously you're not as invested in that, but do you think that there's any way that they can spin a breakup of Chase University in a way that could be positive for any of these people? Or do you think that it's kind of just, okay, now back to the drawing board, square one, let's restart and see where everybody goes?
Follow-up question. Do you believe that the split of Chase University is in and of itself a positive?
So I kind of tuned out of your entire conversation before you just said my name, so I wasn't really, I was kind of just a blue sky, just scrolling around waiting for NXT, so I wasn't really paying much attention. In terms of the Chase thing, like I don't know whether they can really sustain any major pushes for any of them in the grand scheme of things beyond just, I think they'll just go back into I guess with things like Roddy Osborne and Duke Hudson, I think they'll just filter back into like the lower mid card area for a little while before they decide to like give them another character or repackage them slightly. Thea Hale can just do Thea Hale stuff. I think she's over enough that she can just move on to whatever she wants to do next, and maybe they'll just cycle out Andre Chase in general. I think that obviously he's a good hand and he's a good talker, but maybe they decide to move him more into a backstage capacity than on screen, because he's kind of like on the older side for an NXT wrestler. So yeah, I'd say I don't really have too much of a no real horse in that race anyway. But yeah, the history would suggest that at least some of them will fall through the cracks, and the most likely ones will probably be Duke Hudson and Riley Osborne.
I could see a scenario where Andre Chase, depending on what his likes are, and all the other stuff that we wouldn't know and be privy to, I could see him kind of filling in the role that I always assumed that Drew Gulak would have been, until all the things came out about Drew Gulak being disliked and having issues backstage and all, where maybe they do just sort of go, all right, well, you can be in the Performance Center. He might even like that. I don't know. But I was trying to brainstorm some ideas recently about, like, you could tag other people up, or you could do some other things. And Thea, I think she's fine on her own. She could be, at least. Duke Hudson, I could see him getting another tag team partner down the line, depending on who they want to tag him with. Sometimes it's pretty easy to see who would be a good tag team, and sometimes you never really know. And then the next thing, they end up pairing up somebody like him and Dante Chen, and it ends up working, and you're like, I never would have seen that. Osborne, I'm a little bit worried about because he hasn't done anything to stand out, so he's probably just going to be like popping up on Level Up and, fighting on that front and losing to like Tyreek Igwe or whatever. Oh, I believe it was Javier Bernal that I was like, I could see Bernal and Hudson potentially working as a tag team, because Hudson's more on the comedic side of things. Then again, we haven't seen Bernal in a long, long time. I don't know what's going on with his injury. Injured. Yeah, it's like what? It's been like about a year.
I'm not sure, but safe bet that it's the knees.
If it's not an ACL, it's But yeah, I guess we're gonna find out, of course, closer to next week and next Tuesday how they want to spin this out. But that's a big change for the CW anyway, just because it seems like this would have fit perfectly for it. Yeah. And instead, when they finally switch over to CW, it's the end of this. And they were doing CW stuff before they went to CW. So,
I mean, in fairness, they've got the CW covered with Ashante and Carmen Petrovic. That is so funny in the most ridiculous of ways.
I mean, it's the NXT stuff, the AEW stuff, all that roping into tonight. We got SmackDown and Rampage. We already know what happens on Rampage, so that's not going to be anything worth talking about. On SmackDown, we've got the 3 women that are going to be trying to move on in the bracket for the Women's United States Championship. Still no information about a Women's Intercontinental title, so that's still kind of strange. But there's going to be Bianca Belair, Chelsea Green, and Blair Davenport. I am 50-50 if it's going to be Belair or Chelsea, but I'm leaning more towards it's probably going to be Belair. There's going to be Naomi and Bayley against Tiffany Stratton and Candice LeRae, just to continue that feud going on. LA Knight's going to defend the United States title against Santos Escobar. I'm assuming he just retains. And they're going to do Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes in a face-to-face and continue beating up each other and hopefully get a match announced for Survivor Series. So it looks like it's a pretty standard episode of SmackDown. I'm sure we'll get something with the Bloodline and some kind of follow-up with Paul Heyman. But that's the very last question I want to ask you guys for this episode. Is the previous episode of SmackDown ended with Roman Reigns being urged to give him a call, and then it turns out he's calling Paul Heyman. And when he calls, the wise man doesn't pick up. And it says that the phone number has been out of service. Now, here's the 2-part of this that, I guess it's the 3-part of it, that I feel it's worth mentioning. Number 1, phones don't work like that anymore in the same way. So if you're calling Paul Heyman's cell phone and he had a broken cell phone, he would get a new cell phone and the plan would just pick up where he left off.
Well, but he disconnected the line because he no longer wants to serve the tribal chief because he's a loser.
So it has to be that he changed his phone line as opposed to the phone's broken from the beatdown of what it was before, which then implies I don't want to talk to Roman Reigns. I'm mad at him. I'm upset with him for some reason or another. Maybe because he ghosted me. Maybe because he's a loser. Maybe because he's like, I have to distance myself because I got attacked and that's too dangerous for me. Whatever story they want to go with. Somewhere down the line, Paul Heyman's going to come back into the mix. And the potential options for what they could do, I hope what they don't do is just have him pop up on this episode. Or next week to be like, right before War Games, we just got to throw that in there. But yeah, maybe he pops up afterward. Maybe he pops up after The Rock comes back, and it's like, well, we need somebody to talk on that end to offset The Rock. Maybe it ends up being that he's a part of The Rock's side of things, and that's the big twist or something.
He does have a second phone for The Rock.
It could be that direction. And I've seen people try to make the argument that since Seth Rollins isn't 100% confirmed for War Games, that CM Punk would fall into the mix there, and that Punk and Paul Heyman would have their kind of connection and all. But that to me gets even messier, because then it's like, do you really want to have CM Punk in the War Games match, potentially be risky for injuries and stuff, and have him opposite Bronson Reed, who's fusing with Seth Rollins? Like, that's, you know, that seems crazy to me. So where do you think they go with this Paul Heyman story?
Maybe at the end of War Games, or maybe right in the nick of time for War Games, because they seem to like dragging everything out until the very last second. So maybe it'll be like, and oh my God, Brock Lesnar is going to be the fifth guy in War Games. The fact of the matter is this: I'm already annoyed that they're doing this, because there was no more perfect War Games scenario than the 4-on-4, and they've completely over-convoluted this thing. But I could see Heyman coming in clutch with a fifth guy.
What are your thoughts on the Heyman front, Callum? Or what's going on Blue Sky?
I was listening to this one, but yeah, I didn't really I don't know too much, because like the obvious choice just puts Seth Rollins in there. I mean, it would be more interesting if Paul Heyman is able to find someone or come back and bring someone in. I mean, the big issue is that it could be Brock.
Right, because it's Heyman ties.
Yeah, because that's the thing that I'm probably most nervous about.
And isn't Brock Canadian?
He lives in Canada.
He's not Canadian, but yeah.
I mean, they're in Canada.
Yeah, he lives in Canada, so like that should be. But that would be an easy fit for him. But yeah, that's probably the thing that I'm probably most nervous about, is that Brock is the fifth guy. Which, you know, like, as I'm nervous in the sense that, like, I don't care in the grand scheme of things because I'm not really watching WWE stuff, but it just feels like it's a bit of an odd thing. Well, I say odd thing to do, a bit of a like a seedy thing to do at this stage. But you know, they're going to do what they're going to do in those instances. And yeah, so it probably opens the door to that possibility if they want to do something with Brock leading into WrestleMania.
I do find it very strange that addressing the idea of how do we get Seth Rollins to join when he doesn't want to join a team with Roman Reigns becomes not, you need to make a call and you need to apologize to Seth Rollins, but you need to call up Paul Heyman and bring him in there.
Why would they expect an apology out of him when they haven't gotten one themselves?
True. So, I mean, I don't know if that's something that's an oversight on WWE's creative team, or if that's them being like, the reason why they're going to lose at War Games is because Roman refuses to apologize and he needs to suffer another loss before he really snaps out of it and starts to become the actual leader for the team.
Do you think they're actually going to have him apologize at all?
I don't know. It's tough because it's like they're treating it as if he kind of did when he didn't. He just fundamentally didn't. I think
they think good enough. Shut up.
Like, it would be too weak of him to like apologize. So instead he could just say yeet and everybody can assume an apology or something. It could be like that. I don't know.
I think they'll do like a big like apology promo or big segment in the build up to the match with The Rock at WrestleMania. If that is or whoever his match is, whether it's with Solo, whether it's with The Rock at WrestleMania, it'll be like he'll have one moment of like a segment leading up to like a 20-minute promo segment of like his catharsis, essentially, just him explaining what he did, why he did what he did, and trying to atone for all of that stuff, and that'll be there to get like try and big monster rating before the match takes place. So
you know what's wild? They haven't done Roman versus Solo, have they? I really hope they're not dragging that particular match all the way out till Mania.
They really better not.
Well, I'd say it's one of two things. Either he's got the match with The Rock at WrestleMania, and the solo match will be at like Royal Rumble or something.
Saturday night's main event, maybe.
Yeah, or something along those lines. Or that, or The Rock can't wrestle at WrestleMania, and so they do have to drag that match out with Solo until WrestleMania. So it will all depend on what happens in the weeks leading up to either that Saturday, if not night's main event, or the Royal Rumble. If we know at that point that they're going to have that match there, then we can feel pretty confident that the Rock match will happen at WrestleMania. If Solo and Roman are in the Royal Rumble, then yeah, they're definitely doing that match at WrestleMania.
Yeah, it's these next 2 weeks, it might end up being a big shift in that. But before we got Survivor Series, we do have AEW Full Gear, so that's going to be the next podcast from everybody, that we will do our usual breakdown, pay-per-view point, post-show immediately following AEW Full Gear tomorrow night. I'll, of course, have live coverage on smark.moment.com. I'll be doing live coverage on the wrestling news. So you'll be able to, if you follow along with the results, I don't know if I'm going to really type out anything. I haven't been doing that as much lately, of like typing my thoughts throughout the show. Partially because I'm, juggling a bunch of other things. Partially because I'm like, well, I'll save it for the podcast instead of writing it all out. So that's all the more reason for you to tune into the podcast. So keep all that in mind. We do have that coming up. And then we will start getting into the Survivor Series War Game stuff next week, which will include not only the pay-per-view point predictions and post-show and an episode of the Hot Tags, but I'm definitely going to, unless, let me cross my finger of like hoping that things don't get crazy. I'm hoping to do at least one, if not 2 or 3 other recordings of different Darkcast type material of like fantasy booking stuff for like Team AEW versus Team WWE, or what if it was Raw versus SmackDown instead? How would we have set up who the teams would have been? And plenty of articles out there and all. So, if you dig the massive breakdown of Survivor Series setup, you'll be getting that content over the next 7 days or so. But in the meantime, as I've said before, make sure you hit the like button on this. Make sure you are subscribed. Ring that notification bell for those email alerts. Check out all the different buttons that you can find on the YouTube side of things. Leave those comments and click on the join button. Help us out on that front. Generally speaking, just go over to the link tree at amangotree.com. You'll find links to the Smark Out Moment content, the Fanboys Anonymous content, and anything else. I do have to adjust that a little bit and kind of get some different links sorted out and stuff. But in the grand scheme, you know how to find all those things. And if you don't know where to find something, then you could just ask and, leave a comment below and talk about something else. But that's at me. I am at Tony Mango on most of those different things. I do have to add like Blue Sky and stuff on that too. I have to be on Blue Sky. Let's put it that way. I have an account on there and I never do anything. So we'll see. But I'm on those things. Go ahead and follow me and do the same thing for Robin Callum.
I am on all of the things. It's Dude Felice everywhere. They just announced Anna, Jay, and Deonna Purrazzo. So there's that. I am on all those different platforms. It's Dude Felice everywhere, so that's easy enough to find. Check out Fightful. Fightful will have all the stuff for Full Gear and the post-show after and the scrum after. And, you know the deal. And wrestling never stops, so that's the best places you can find me and support me. But also, you should support Callum Wiggins because he's a cool guy.
Oh, thank you. You're halfway decent as well.
Thank you.
But you can check me out on Twitter and Blue Sky at Wigmeister14, or just find Wigmeister14 through that stuff, and you can check that stuff there. Check out the Power Rankings every single Saturday over on smarkoutmoment.com, where I rank the WWE superstars based on their prior week's performances. And while you're there, you can head on over to the Fantasy League, also at WWEFantasyLeague.com, to see how our teams are doing and how the wrestlers we've got on our rosters, how many points they're picking up on a week-to-week basis as we head towards Survivor Series, the next kind of fork in the road where our teams will be shook up a little bit. And then, And then, yeah, just heading out towards WrestleMania, close to the kind of final stretch of things, only like basically in the final third of the year now. So all to play for as we head into that, between me and Rob, all to play for as we move into that final stretch.
Yeah.
One of these days, it's going to actually be a three-way race. Effectively.
I mean, it really should be a three-way race, but Tony keeps messing up his advantages because he's got literally every advantage that he could possibly get in this entire thing, and he hasn't taken advantage of those advantages. So.
For some reason, every time I pick people and I switch things around, it ends up being like, well, that means fuck all.
Well, it's because you just insisted on keeping like Tula Tonga on your team for like half of the year when he hasn't even debuted at any point.
I mean, to be on my defense, they were bringing people in constantly, and they had just announced that and all, and it was like, it's clearly they're gonna do something before War Games, like, you know.
Yeah,
that motherfucker.
They're not going to add Bronson Reed when they have another
right. Like, what the hell?
Waiting right there.
See, my perpetual issue is I might not be right, but I at least approach some things with logic, and I keep forgetting this world is not logical. There's so many reasons. Linda McMahon is going to be the Secretary of Department of Education that prove that this is a thing that logic does not fall into that. So, that's a topic we decided not to really talk about, but I wanted to throw it out there just as a quick jab. So Fantasy League, yep, check that out. See how I end up bombing by the end of this season, and stay tuned for everything else that's coming your way, everybody. Whatever it is, if you get hit in the face with a new podcast randomly, then thumbs up. If it ends up being just the schedule that we got, then stay tuned for those things. We'll see you then, everybody. That for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.
We fail English? That's impossible.